So last Tuesday I got to see The Walk, and that's because it came out 2 weeks later in my theaters for some reason. And so now I get to finally talk about it. So I gotta throw this out there right now. I had a blast seeing The Walk. The Walk is a true story about the guy that walked across the World Trade Centers on a frickin' tightrope. The man's name is Philippe Petit, and he's played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The whole film is narrated by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who tells the tale of when this guy gets the idea to walk across the World Trade Centers and how he starts his journey in tightroping and the eventual lead up to him going to New York and pulling off this heist, because it's not necessarily legal. And I was not bored with any moment during this film. Just like many other big dramas these days, The Walk was a really funny movie throughout. Just like The Martian. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's portrayal of this character was very fun, very entertaining. He felt like the passionate artist, and there was some really funny moments with that sort of character he is. So much so that there was practically a smile on my face every time he was in the scene. Not only is he quite the character and really fun, but you get a sense of his passion, you get a sense of why he loves to do what he does, and eventually you get brought into some of his doubts and some of the times where he felt like maybe he couldn't do this. I think he had a couple really nice character arcs with the main character. You see the progression of where he's doing it for mainly himself and maybe for the publicity, but then eventually does it for entertainment, to entertain the audience below. And when his doubts creep in after seeing how large the World Trade Center is, he eventually overcomes these fears and he does the walk. As well as the character arc of him appreciating the people that are helping him, because he can't do it alone. He has to have a bunch of people because this is like a heist. And that heist element is really fun. Speaking of heist, the music sounded like a typical heist movie. It felt like it belonged in a heist movie, and it belonged in this movie. When I first saw the trailer for The Walk, I was a little worried with the visuals because they almost looked a little cartoony in the trailers. But after seeing this movie, there's only a few times where I felt it was a little cartoony. Most of the time, I was marveling at the visual effects of this film, especially during the walk between the Twin Towers. And going back a little bit on the soundtrack for the heist part, the soundtrack was epic and great and magical for the moment when he walks between the World Trade Centers. There is a lot of magical elements to the film, not like magical as in like magic is happening, it's the best word to describe this film is magical. I think the moment where he's finally walking between the World Trade Centers and things are going on, it's ridiculously intense. It has a bit of humor, it has a bit of comical moments during this whole ordeal, but it's still intense, and I was on the edge of my seat. I was worried for the character. I didn't want him to fall, even though I know what happens. But I was just like, just don't do it, I was like that pretty much the whole time during the walk between the World Trade Centers, because it's not just walking from point A to point B. There's a lot of other things that happen, and it's intense. Even during some of the heist moments are intense because, like I said, it keeps this humor throughout, but it never detracts from the actual intensity. And you do worry for these characters when they're frickin' in danger. You're also worried that the heist could possibly not pull off because there's so many things that go wrong. There's so many things that could have prevented them from being able to do this. But it eventually is just, they overcome it, and it is epic. If I were to be nitpicky about this film, the only thing I can think about is some of the visuals, because even though most of the visuals are breathtaking, are magical, are incredibly realistic, sometimes it gets a little cartoony, mostly from Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. because there was a few times when obviously the camera backs away and it's not really him on the World Trade Center or between the World Trade Centers. It gets a little cartoony and almost a little bit like Pan when he's flying in Pan. But thankfully, unlike Pan, it's not a close-up, it's a far away image, so you only spot it if you're looking really, really carefully. I feel this is a film that is meant to commemorate the towers and just give us a beautiful memory of them. But I think it's very safe to give The Walk 4.5 stars. So have you seen The Walk? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If you haven't seen The Walk, what is your favorite movie based off of a true story? And as always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.